So BRICS might be creating their own currency, and this could be a game changer for the world. Now, for quite a few years now, we've been hearing a lot of rumblings about the BRICS bloc coming together to form a new currency to challenge the dollar, right? And in 2023, this might actually begin to take shape at the BRICS summit. Now, we have Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov announcing that the BRICS bloc will be discussing the creation of a new common currency. And according to him, serious self-respecting countries are well aware of what is at stake, and they want to create their own mechanisms to ensure sustainable development, which will be protected from the external directive. And it's very easy to realize what he's referring to, right? Which is the sanctions and the weaponization of the US dollar. And I think by now, we can see the world is starting to split into various blocks. G7 on one end and the BRICS nations on the other, and we can see it in the oil markets today, and we are going to see it happen in the currency markets as well. It's going to happen sooner or later. However, creating a BRICS reserve currency isn't going to be easy, guys, especially if you're trying to dethrone the US dollar. And this is what we have to discuss today. Will the new BRICS currency be a unified currency like the euro? Will it be based on a basket of currencies like the SDR, or maybe backed by commodities like gold and oil? Because if they get it right, we could see another world reserve currency rising to challenge and steal market share from the almighty dollar. Now, the first option is to create a common currency. It is also what Brazil and Argentina are discussing about developing today. Now, the euro is also another example of a common currency. Now, a common currency is actually the easiest to understand, right? But it's actually the hardest to implement. You're talking about every country in the BRICS bloc: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, all abandoning their national currencies for a single BRICS currency. Now, there are a lot of pros and cons for BRICS currency. The pros is you cut down currency risk, you help promote trade and encourage investment as a whole within the bloc itself, right? However, that is just on the surface, guys. And the BRICS nations, they are just too diverse and their population is too huge compared to Europe and their Euro experiment. Now, if we take a look at the Euro, we can see there's one big fundamental problem. You have one currency that 20 countries use. In fact, not all of the EU members actually use the euro. 7 to 8 of them don't. And the reason is very simple. One currency means one single monetary policy for all other countries, right? You need one central bank like the ECB for the entire BRICS, which isn't always a good thing. So just imagine if China, India, and the rest of BRICS replace all their sovereign currencies for one single currency, it will be mass chaos, right? For example, if China is suffering from high inflation, they might need to jack up interest rates. But if the rest of the BRICS nations, they need to grow their economy, then raising interest rates isn't a good move. There comes the big question once again of who do you listen to? We can see China's GDP is more than double that of the other 4 BRICS nations combined, and that is a huge gap. Does that mean China will get more say in the BRICS central bank? And that's why things are really tricky here. We can already see many BRICS countries having big plans for their own currencies. For example, China is trying to get the Saudis and Gulf states to use the Chinese yuan, while India is developing their rupee trade mechanism. They are in talks with the UAE for bilateral trade in rupees, right? They won't give it up either. So if BRICS were to adopt a single unified currency, I can see a lot of economic problems. There will be a lot of power struggles over monetary policies, and the BRICS as a whole won't be harmonious, right? And if that happens, good luck trying to challenge the dollar or even the euro. And in order to develop a new reserve currency, it has to be attractive not just for outside investors and countries to use, but also for the BRICS nations themselves to adopt. But why does BRICS, especially China and Russia, want a new currency outside of the dollar, right? Why not just store everything in physical gold? And the most common answer is to avoid sanctions from the US. If you only use dollars, the effects of sanctions can be really devastating. But that's only one reason, and we need to go further. Now, I love gold, I buy it, I invest in it, but it's more a store of value than an actual medium of exchange in today's world, right? Gold is for defense, while currencies are for offense. And if you're a country or group of nations like BRICS and you want to spread your influence to the world, you need to develop a reserve currency. And this allows countries to transact with you instantly, take out loans in your currency, and price their goods and services in the BRICS currency, for example. Remember that it's all about snatching market share from the US dollar. And right now, the dollar accounts for 60% of global trade. Whether it's commodities or new TV, the majority is still priced in dollars. And the majority of global debt is also issued in dollars. So countries and companies constantly need dollars to import stuff and pay back loans. And this creates a powerful feedback loop that the BRICS nations want. Because if a BRICS currency is created, it'll be more useful than the yuan, the rupee, or the ruble. With one currency, you'll be able to import commodities and buy goods from the entire BRICS bloc. It becomes very useful, right? And if you're OPEC or the Gulf states, this is very attractive. You can price your oil in this new currency and use it to import food from India or maybe finished goods from China, right? And the reason why Saudi Arabia still prices their oil in US dollars is not just the security guarantees, but the dollar is still the most useful currency in the world. It has that incredible network effect where everyone is using it. But if a BRICS currency is developed, things can really change. And we can see that since the euro was established in 1999, it gradually gained in market share and is now 21% of global reserves. At the same time, the dollar share dropped from over 70% to just 59%. So if a BRICS currency does materialize, we could see more market share being taken away from the dollar, and this is essentially de-dollarization as well. But if a single unified currency isn't feasible, what can the BRICS bloc do? And this is where things get really interesting, right? The BRICS bloc can create a new reserve currency without disrupting their local economies too much, and that is by creating a common trade unit first. It will be the bridge between today and the eventual idea of a unified BRICS currency. So this is what a common trade unit is. The Chinese yuan, the Indian rupee, and the Russian ruble will all still exist, but a new common unit of account will be created to facilitate trade amongst the BRICS nations first, and let's call this unit the BRICS buck, for example. And this means the BRICS nations can trade amongst themselves using BRICS bucks and reduce their dependence on the US dollar. So if I'm India and I want electronics from China, I can immediately import goods using the BRICS buck, and then China can also use that same unit to buy oil and gas from Russia or Brazil. There isn't a need to swap for dollars first, then move on to another local currency. It's even more flexible than bilateral trade with each other's currencies, right? But to make this possible, this new unit, the BRICS buck, needs to be based on something, right? It will likely be either a basket of currencies or commodities, and we need to explore both of these options. Now, a currency basket is nothing new. Before the euro was created in 1999, Europe had a common unit of account they used to trade with each other. It was called the European Currency Unit, or the ECU. Now, the ECU was an interim trade unit before the euro completely replaced it as a unified currency, right? And we can see that one ECU was backed by a currency basket that included the Deutsche Mark, British pound, and the French franc. Now, the German mark contributed 32% to the unit, the franc accounted for 20%, and the pound was around 12% or so. And if we base a currency basket on just GDP, we could see the Chinese yuan and the Indian rupee having the most say. Now, this is a good step if it happens. It will attract some market share away from the dollar, but things get really interesting if we move towards a commodity backing. Now, what if we back the new BRICS buck with commodities like oil or even gold? Now, those two are the most likely commodities because every country needs oil and gold has been money for thousands of years. Suddenly, things are starting to fall into place. We know that China has been stockpiling tons of gold, and Russia alone accounts for 12.2% of oil production, making them on par with Saudi Arabia. And if we add in Brazil and India, we have a whole collection of huge commodity producers. So the BRICS nations might in fact have enough commodities to back their new trade unit or currency. And that is very attractive to other countries outside of the BRICS because commodities will add intrinsic value to the BRICS buck. And in the worst case scenario, if you don't trust BRICS, you can dump the currency or the unit and demand commodities, oil and gold in return. But here's the deal, right? No matter what BRICS chooses, they have to create a very big incentive to break away from the dollar. There has to be something more tangible and risk-free to develop a new reserve currency today. The world's already too used to the dollar system, and to break away will mean short-term pain and even a currency crisis. Now, one strategy is to declare the new currency to be free of any sanctions or restrictive measures, right? And it means you remove any link of politics to the currency and treat it as such. The currency is meant for trade and finance and nothing else. We already know the effects of sanctions and how they can destabilize a reserve currency. Even the former US Treasury Secretary Jacob Lewis warned about this in 2016. In his speech, he mentioned how the more we condition use of the dollar and our financial system on adherence to US foreign policy, the more the risk of migration to other currencies and other financial systems in the medium term grows. And the same applies to BRICS, right? Doesn't matter if it's China or the United States, sanctions always tend to backfire. And in this case of reserve currency, it will just make countries run away from it. If BRICS seriously wants to build a new reserve currency, they'll have to stack advantages for other countries to see, right? They have to make sure the risk is worth it. They must create a superior product versus the dollar and not just something that is slightly better, right? And that's why we have to be patient. Even if the BRICS nations agrees on creating a new currency in a 2023 summit, there will be multiple steps to get there. Will it be based on a basket of currencies or commodities like gold? How will they integrate this into CBDCs in order to escape the SWIFT systems that is controlled by the G7 central banks, right? And let's remember that it took the dollar over 80 years to become what it is today. The United States made very ingenious moves to secure the dollar legacy, right? And this included the Bretton Woods Agreement, using gold to peg global currencies to the dollar, and then came in the petrodollar agreement, which priced oil in US dollars, right? And this created a powerful dependency on dollars for energy and global trade. So let's really carefully watch what happens at the BRICS summit, because if they decide to back their new currency with commodities, then we could see the price of gold really take off, right? But if it's a currency basket, then it'll be a slow burn and it'll take quite a few years to even get started. Now, throughout this conversation, I've discounted the possibility of Saudi Arabia joining BRICS. But if that happens, guys, then the new BRICS currency will take off even faster, especially if they decide to back it with oil. Now, with the Saudis in the BRICS, you have the leader of OPEC and over 32% of global oil production now. So this creates a very compelling case for central banks and nations to give the new BRICS Plus currency a try, right? Now, will this happen during the 2023 summit? I really don't know. It's all speculation for now. But looking back at the things that happened in 2022, right? Anything can truly happen. However, one thing is for certain, whether the BRICS currency is based on a basket of other currencies or backed by commodities, this isn't good news for the dollar long term. And that's why I'm still long on hard assets and still committing gold. If a new reserve currency comes out and if it's backed by commodities, then the upside could be tremendous. A new BRICS currency will be a black swan event for the US dollar. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Will BRICS really create their own currency to challenge the world order? Will it be backed up by commodities? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.